afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Accounting in Practice Theatre at Accountex 2019. My name's Mark Lee. It's my pleasure to be here today. Some of you are going to know the question that I am about to ask you. I asked the same question last year with the same slides, but it is a different presentation. The question, however, is the same. It's a really important question. How many of you, looking around the room, consider yourselves to be special and different compared to the other accountants in the room? Hands up. Oh, it's quite a few hands. That doesn't normally happen. One gentleman put up 2 hands. Really different. How many of you consider yourselves to be pretty similar to the other accountants in the room? And how many of you are so similar you don't like putting your hands up? There's always quite a few in answer to that one. The important point that I want to stress here, and I will repeat it because it is so important, is that you are all special and different. It's a very common mistake we make as accountants. I trained and qualified as an accountant myself many years ago. A very common mistake to assume that we are all the same because we're providing the same services, because of the outcome that we're looking to produce as a set of accounts and tax returns that is much the same regardless of who's produced it. That is to confuse what we produce with how we produce it. We are all special and different. At the end of this talk today, I'm going to highlight that point, explain why, the ways in which you could identify your differences, your specialness, that's a better one, but also highlight an important mistake that people make when they highlight the way that they are special and different from other accountants. It's a mistake I don't want you to make. I'll share that right at the end of my talk today. So what are we going to be addressing today? By the end of the talk, I make you 3 promises. By the end of today's session, you're going to have a better understanding of how technology is impacting the profession, the changes and developments that are coming, not just technologically, beyond that. Secondly, I promise you're going to have a better understanding as to the impact that these developments and changes will have on your practice. And thirdly, what actions you can take to benefit from and exploit those changes. So if that's why you've come today, you're in luck. That's what we're going to be addressing. But first of all, I need to check who's here today. I'm not going to ask you for your names, obviously, but I think there are 3 possibilities. I'm going to ask you to put your hands up for one of these 3. Either you are a sole practitioner, or you work for a sole practitioner, or you hope to set up your own practice, or you're in a small practice as a partner or employee, or you're in a large practice as a partner or employee. Please, if I know the majority, I can then tailor the talk to suit the majority. How many people are sole practitioners? Okay, thank you very much. How many people are in small practices? Fair number there. How many people are in large practices? Thank you very much. Clearly then, I'm going to tailor what we do today to focus on the sole practitioners and the smaller firms. That means the content and the examples I share will be very different from those that I share when I'm speaking at conferences and events for larger firms and when I'm on stage at international associations' annual conferences. Some of you may be familiar with this quote. It's from Arthur C. Clarke, famous British science fiction writer, scientist and futurist. He said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Did anybody come here today expecting to see a magic trick? Not enough of you. You see, I am treasurer of the Magic Circle as well as being a chartered accountant, but I didn't get anything like enough hands there, and I'm doing a talk later at 3:30 in the future. Theatre, you're welcome to pop along there. I'll stick a magic trick in there. Instead, I want to draw your attention to something that was in the paper at the weekend. Sorry, not the weekend, over Easter. I don't know if anybody saw it. I picked this one up on the Tube. The Telegraph, there was a report on a huge survey that had been done asking accountants what they feared most about the future. Did anybody see it? I didn't see it reported anywhere else. What accountants feared most about the future. It's a huge survey. Loads of accountants responded, and so many responses, in fact, that you could say that it became a very big poll. In fact, it was a huge poll. You must have seen it. No, maybe not. Okay. That's as close as we're going to get to the magic. Often when I present this talk, I'm following on after a futurist or futurologist has spoken, and they set the scene for what's changing in the world of technology. Today, I'm my own futurist. I'm addressing those points today. So just to set some background for you here, we are on the cusp of what is being referred to as the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth! Who remembers when the first one was? It was about 300 years ago in the 1800s. It's when we moved from being a largely farming-based economy to steam-driven economy. In those days, accountants wrote up huge leather-bound ledgers with quill pens and ink. Haven't we come a long way since then? But that was 300 years ago. The second industrial revolution, only about 100 years ago. The introduction of electricity, production lines, mass production in factories. These changed the industrial world. In accountancy, we moved from abacuses to comptometers. Anybody else remember comptometers? Predecessors of electronic calculators? Yeah, not many. You have no idea what I'm talking about. An electronic calculating machine, manual, had no external power. The third industrial revolution happened during my lifetime and some of yours as well. It was only 30 years ago. The computer age, digitalization. When we started taking advantage of digital technology, and for accountants, what did that mean? That meant calculators, spreadsheets, and computers, changing the way we worked, speeding up the rate at which we could deliver knowledge and information and services to clients. And now we're on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. But look at the difference in time between each of those revolutions. The speed at which things have been changing. The fourth industrial revolution, that overlap between the physical, the digital, and the biometric. The speed with which this is happening and impacting our lives is astonishing, scary to some, and there's a lot of people telling you that it's going to have a major impact on your accountancy firm tomorrow, and it won't. Not tomorrow. That's coming. Let me just outline for you some of the major changes that are following in the not too distant future. Augmented intelligence, often referred to as artificial intelligence, often misunderstood. Artificial intelligence, as distinct from artificial human intelligence, or as Stephen Hawking called it, artificial general intelligence. Robotics, intelligent automation we might call it. It's happening to a degree already. We have the introduction of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. Access to and the facility to interact with big data using data analytics. The Internet of Things, ubiquity computing. That all-pervasive, invisible technology we take for granted. We don't even notice when this stuff is happening. Think about the technology embedded in smartphones. The camera alone is incredibly intelligent compared to the sort of Polaroids and machine cameras that I used years ago. Biometrics are happening. The latest news was that Heathrow Airport is going to be using biometrics instead of requiring us to show passports at the gate in future. It hasn't yet moved into the accountancy world, I don't think. Fifth generation wireless technology, the speed and access we will have to that, so we'll be less reliant upon dodgy Wi-Fi signals. Automatically filed tax returns because the information the revenue require is already in their systems. It's not round the corner, but it's not impossible either. and autonomous vehicles. We keep reading about those in the press as well. These are all things that are going to be happening in the future. Some of them are already here, just a couple of examples. Grant Thornton is already offering clients services that involve advanced data analytics and cyber risk accountancy advisory services. KPMG are working with IBM on cognitive computing, another word for AI, and collaborating with colleges to build up the data analytical skills of the next generation of accountants. These are just two examples. There are many others. And indeed, if you look around the exhibition at Accountex today and tomorrow, you will see more examples of things that are coming that are not as far away as we might imagine. Now, I'm sure it'd be really entertaining if I was to talk about the accounting equivalent of flying cars. But that is really so far in the future, it's not helpful. One of the things it says on my business card, and the bookmark you have on your seat is a business card of mine, lists a number of things that I do when I provide strategic advice for accountants. The last word on the card is debunker, because I tend to debunk the hype and myths and misconceptions about the future, about marketing, social media and the like. Anything that can help you be more successful into the future, I will debunk the hype. And if I was to talk about what's happening as far in the future as flying cars, it's not relevant to you now. There's not a lot you can do about it today. So let's start by looking at the big changes, the technological changes that are going to impact you, and let me address the elephant in the room. Over the last few years, there have been a lot of people telling you, you've got to move into the cloud, you've got to adopt all this technology. If you don't do that, you're going to lose all your clients and the future is dead to you. We know that's not true. We know you are not suddenly going to lose all of your clients overnight. What I'm going to be talking about in the rest of this session today is not about what you do with your existing clients. I trust you to be able to look after and retain your existing clients. I will address some important issues. What I'm going to be addressing though is how are you going to attract and retain new clients in the future. This is not necessarily about growing your practice and becoming a multi-million pound practice. It's not even necessarily about growing your practice if you're a sole practitioner so you're making £500,000 or £1 million. You may not have those sort of ambitions. But over the course of time, inevitably, some clients die. Some sell, some move to another part of the country or emigrate or move elsewhere. They don't all stay with you forever. You'll want to replace those clients that leave. The question is, how are you going to attract people to replace those clients that leave? That's where I believe the main focus needs to be for people running an established sole practitioner or small accounting firm. Some of you know I write a regular blog, I publish regular blog posts, I address most of those issues on there every week. But I don't just write on my own blog, I also post articles on LinkedIn. And I recently put a post up on LinkedIn where I listed out 12 predictions about technological impacts that were going to have an effect on accountants. I'm going to run you through those 12 points quite quickly because I don't think any of them are going to happen tomorrow, but huge caveat coming at the end. The first one is that there will be systems that enable you to identify and query data anomalies across a client's entire financial records. As somebody pointed out, Xavier already enables you to do that working with Xero. This stuff is not that far in the future. Secondly, clients will see adverts encouraging them to use business intelligence software themselves. Will they value your input? Will you know how to provide value over and above what they can get from the stuff they could buy themselves? Thirdly, however you're pricing things at the moment, you will be able to adopt some sort of technology that will allow you to offer clients surge pricing options. Now, we tend not to do that. If we put prices on our websites or we send quotes out to clients, we don't tend to change them very often. Some people put their fees up for existing clients if they don't submit all the information they need in good time. But generally, the fees that you quote are the fees that you quote. The airline companies do it, the train companies do it. Why not professional service providers? Fourthly, you will be able to interpret and examine and explain clients' business data analytics beyond their financial data. Oh my goodness, I don't know how to do that. I don't have the skills to do that. I won't be able to do that yet. You can learn how to do that. More on that later. Fifthly, clients will be able to visit your virtual reality office wherever you are really based. Quite like that idea if you're based at home in a bedroom somewhere. Clients typically don't come to your office, you meet them somewhere else. Hey, you can offer them the opportunity to meet you in a virtual reality office. Sixth, increasingly intelligent digital voice assistants and chatbots. Things that go way beyond what's already embedded in QuickBooks, in Xero and Sage. These exist, they're not perfect, they're not that amazing yet, but they will be. We're only at the start. Seventh, you'll be able to rely on smart contracts, and clients will be relying on smart contracts developed through enterprise blockchain cooperation around the world. Last year I was debunking fake news. Last year I said you don't have to worry about blockchain yet. I stand by that prediction today. But it's going to happen at some stage in the future. Your access to clients' big data will make it easier to provide a wider range of services if you've developed the skills to deliver them, which you have time to do. Ninth, hologram trainers will be appearing in your office or your virtual reality space. 3 years ago, on April the 1st, I shared with my database of accountants, I shared news, and I think I put it on LinkedIn elsewhere as well. It was a joke that I was going to be available through through a partnership with a Japanese technology company. You'd be able to press a button on your phone and I would pop up. A hologram version of me would pop up. I was astonished at how many people believed that I could do that and that a Japanese company would choose to partner with me. Very flattering. It was, of course, a joke. It's a possibility. 10th, the use of drones to perform physical stock takes in warehouses, external depots and farms. And 11th, blockchain technology changing the very nature of audits. And 12th, the use, get this one, the use of compulsion loops and other gaming concepts to better motivate Millennial and Generation Z staff and clients. Now, if you like, this is a new approach to marketing and promotion. If you or your kids or family members are into gaming, you might have some idea of what I'm talking about there. I'm not going to go into it in detail now. I am, however, going to tell you that of those 12 predictions, I was very confident that I had made one of them up. Problem was, by the time I published them on LinkedIn, I couldn't remember which one it was. It wasn't one of my most widely read articles, just under 3,300 views. That's good, but I normally get a lot more than that. But amongst the many comments that I received were a load telling me that at least half of those predictions are already available in some shape or form, or are literally in development and will be available very soon. By the way, did you figure out the one which I made up? It's not obvious, is it? I think the hologram is probably not real. But who knows? Let's move on to looking at how you and your practices will be impacted by these changes and developments. I frequently say there's too much hype about the impact of new technology on accountancy firms in terms of the speed with which you will be impacted. It's not tomorrow. But equally, you can't rest on your laurels. It's not 5 to 10 years away either, certainly not 10 years away. You will almost certainly be impacted within 3 to 5 years. You will need to be doing things differently. You will need to be approaching the way you promote your practice for new clients differently. You will be impacted, you will be losing more clients because you're continuing to provide your services in the old way. You're not losing them yet, but within 3 to 5 years, you will lose more and more clients because of the changes and developments that we are seeing. You ever heard of the Gartner hype cycle? Gartner is a huge American research company, and every year they list out the new technological developments. And they explain where each new development is on the hype cycle. Now, if you've been to Accountex before, you'll be familiar with what's embedded in this hype cycle. The fact that initially, very early on, we get the technology trigger, something new happens, and then there's a load of hype and inflated expectations, both by those who've developed the technology and the early adopters. Nothing wrong with being an early adopter of new technology, but you can get your fingers burned, you can lose out. Because inevitably, shortly after that peak of inflated expectations, we hit the trough of disillusionment. Have you ever acquired new technology or gone for a new system and gone, it doesn't do what they said it would. It doesn't work with my systems, my data, my style, my approach. You're disillusioned. But often if you've invested a lot of money in it, you stick with it for a while, and eventually you get enlightened, the technology develops so it eventually achieves and does what it promised it would do, and you get to that level of productivity that you were hoping for. It all goes through the hype cycle. There's a lot of new developments here today. You may choose to engage with them, you may choose to wait. I don't think there are many sole practitioners and small firms that really benefit from getting in at the ground level, unless the owners of the practices are truly entrepreneurial more than they are accountants. And that's great if that's you, but it's not everyone. Bill Gates put this another way. It's this very famous quote from Bill Gates. He said, people often overestimate what will happen in the next 2 years and underestimate what will happen in 10. 10 years ago, I said that cloud computing was being overhyped. 10 years ago, there were people saying, it was before Accountex, I've spoken at Accountex every year. Accountex only started in 2012. 10 years ago, there were people saying, if you don't move into the cloud now, your practice will die. And I said in 2009, 10 years ago, premature. Don't worry about it. You can wait. Wait until it evolves. Wait until it matures. I was right in 2009. There's a second part to this quote from Bill Gates. People often forget it. The second part is, don't let yourself get lulled into inaction. In 2009, you could afford to be inactive as regards the cloud. You cannot afford to be inactive now, 2019. It is here, it is real, it's being promoted to your clients. Cloud bookkeeping systems. You may have clients who don't care and are happy to carry on working with you. Will you be able to pick up new clients who are happy to ignore what is being heavily promoted to them as regards the way forward to work with accountants? You've got a choice as we move into the future. You might be planning for retirement. You might be looking just to hang on a little bit longer. But equally, if you're looking to retire in the next few years, you might want to ensure you get maximum value for your business, for your practice. That will only happen, ladies and gentlemen, if your practice is well systemized and has evidently clear processes. move it into the cloud if you haven't done already, or accept you will not get paid as much as you would have liked. The alternative between planning to retire or sell up, and that we're all about being well systemized and clear processes, is equally important for anybody thinking of selling their practice in the next few years. Alternatives are, if you want to move into the future, to start adapting and changing the way you do things so that you can reap the benefits of the new technology, retain your clients, build your practice going forwards, or you can just accept it's going to dwindle and die. As I say, it won't be tomorrow. It won't be within 2 or 3 years. It will be within 5 to 10 years if you carry on doing what you've always done. You know what they say? If you carry on doing what you've always done, you'll carry on getting what you've always got. It's rubbish. It's not true. If you carry on doing what you've always done and the world around you changes, what you get may well be less than you got before, because other people are changing. Anybody in the room learned to drive at some stage in the past? You know how to drive a car? I want to offer you an analogy here. I remember learning to drive a car 17 years ago, over 40 years ago. I was scared to get into a car, to sit on the other side of the front of the car, coordinating the steering wheel, the accelerator, the brake, the clutch, the handbrake, the gear stick, indicators, lights, mirror maneuver. Remember that one? And the 3 mirrors you've got to keep your eyes on. Rear view mirror, 2 side mirrors. In my day, they were wing mirrors. I was never going to understand how to do this. This was so difficult, so challenging. I'm sure it was for many of you as well. Think back to how you felt when you first learned to drive, if you did. How long was it before you actually took the car over 30 miles an hour? I remember my driving test as if it was yesterday. I remember exactly where I was when I was trying to do a hill start, and I stalled, and I handbrake on, out of gear, apologized to the examiner next to me, tried to set off again, stalled again. I stalled 10 times trying to do that hill start. I knew I'd failed. I got to the end of the test. The examiner in those days asked you 2 or 3 technical questions. I remember them, won't bore you with them. And he turned to me and he said, "Mr. Lee, before I tell you whether you've passed or failed, let me advise you never to apply any brakes in a skid," because I clearly didn't know the answer to that question. And then he told me I'd passed. I was so relieved. And then I had the courage to ask him. I said, I was convinced I'd failed because of all the stalling. He said, "Mr. Lee, although you stalled, you never once lost control of the car. You knew what you were doing. You kept things in control." Important lesson I found in life. Stay in control. But thinking about learning to drive a car, how often do we put off learning new skills because they seem so incredibly difficult? We're never going to be able to learn and do things differently. I remember the first time I drove the car by myself, it was to go and see my grandmother. And I remember, there's nobody else in the car with me. I've never done this by myself before. When we learn new skills in our practices, to run our practices, to deliver new services to clients, you can learn them by yourself. You could work alongside somebody who helps you and mentors you. And then you'll have that first time you do it by yourself. It's scary, but you will invariably know more than your clients. If you've got a good system and a good process, you will get there. Don't be scared of learning new skills. Think back to how you felt when you finally had the courage and confidence to drive a car by yourself, to take passengers in your car. And how often do you think about mirror signal maneuver? How often do you consciously think about accelerator, brake, clutch? We do it on autopilot now, or we drive automatic cars. We make life easy for ourselves. So when I talk about those new skills and services you're going to need, some of you may already be focused not on compliance services, but on providing what clients really want from their accountants: insights, support, and advice that they value. I like to call these Visa services: valuable insight, support, and advice. If you think about it, that's what clients really want from their accountants, isn't it? How many of you went into accountancy because you loved the idea of producing books, bookkeeping, producing sets of accounts, tax returns, and filing tax returns? Was that a great motivator when you started your professional career? Of course it wasn't. That's not why we became accountants, is it? We became accountants because we will have all had our own reasons. My reason, that's all I can share definitively. My reason was because I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I wanted a general business qualification that would allow me to make decisions later in life. I then qualified, stayed in accountancy. I was a partner at Clark Whitehall, as it then was, then BDO headhunted me. That was cool. But I realized 2006, I didn't enjoy giving tax advice anymore. I didn't like studying it. That didn't turn me on. What I liked doing was working with the professionals who I worked with, but even back then, we were accountants and lawyers and other professionals. I liked giving strategic advice. I liked standing on stage, speaking, writing, mentoring. And since 2006, that's what I've been doing with my career. But at no stage, when I was an accountant in practice or a tax advisor, did I ever think, oh yes, preparing accounts and preparing tax returns, that's what I really wanted to do. We slipped into it, a lot of accountants slip into focusing on all of that stuff, when really we want to focus on providing valuable insights, support, and advice for clients. The problem is when people suggest that's what we should be doing, we struggle. We're scared. We're scared because we don't know how to do it. And if we're good accountants, we don't even know what we don't know. We are unconsciously incompetent. Then we get to the stage where we find out what's involved. We go, oh my goodness, now I'm consciously incompetent. Then we start learning and practicing and developing. We become consciously competent, and then eventually it's like driving a car, we become unconsciously competent. I run a monthly mentoring session, a roundtable group for sole practitioner accountants in London. I'll be talking more about it at 3:30 in the Future Theatre. But David, who's here, has been coming for 2 or 3 years now. I can admit this because I know him well enough. Before he joined, when I first set it up, I didn't know how it would work. I had some good ideas, some good plans. Over the years, I'm now unconsciously competent at running the sessions. I hope David would agree. People love it. They get tremendous value from it. But it took a while to get there. But I could only reach that level by doing something, not just by thinking about it. I've referenced some of these examples of stuff that's already out there, stuff you could be integrating into your practice here and now. I've already talked about some of these. The number of people I speak to in the speaking world and the magic world, the entrepreneurial worlds that I mix beyond accountants, who tell me that their bookkeeping has been transformed because either they or their accountants have moved their books into the cloud. They've got direct bank feeds, automatic receipt, online capturing. That's non-accountants telling me how it's changed their lives. If you haven't embraced this stuff yet, Accountex is a great time to look at the options available and make some decisions. If you like, this is a key quote. The perceived value of what you do, of compliance work, is going to fall, so what you do must evolve. Your existing clients, as I said before, are happy with what you're doing and how you do it. They may not leave you. new clients, new businesses, young entrepreneurs, people moving out of the workforce into starting businesses, they're going to be aware of how much automation is out there. They're not going to be happy to pay you the same fees you've been charging your existing clients just to do the compliance work. The perceived value of compliant work will fall, so what you do has to evolve, or you have to be happy to build up your practice and find ways in which you can take on loads more clients, all of whom will be paying you lower average fees, but that then means you've got to manage far more relationships. Is that how you want your practice to develop? It might be, fine. Another way of looking at this, when everybody says you've got to move into advisory work, move away from compliance work, let me offer you a way of thinking about advisory work. There's a number of people who point out that just talking about advisory is not helpful. So I would suggest that most accountants I've worked with, the vast majority of their fees come from compliance work. Your numbers will be slightly different to that. There's then 5 other ways in which you might be providing services to clients. What I call impromptu advice. It says on your website, we advise on, we can do all these things. In practice, you never give any advice on them until the client asks, or some third party, the revenue or a purchaser, needs knowledge and information the client needs to get from you or needs your help with. But it's impromptu. You're not starting the conversation. Maybe you have some specialist expertise, research and development, capital allowances, David's into probate work. Maybe you have specialist expertise that you actively promote. You don't just sit there and wait for clients to ask about it. Then we move into what people traditionally talk about advisory work, financial advice. This is, if you like, at the financial controller type level, backwards looking at the historical numbers, the management numbers, maybe looking at cash flows going forwards. Profit improvement, which is more like CFO, finance director related level. And then finally, if you like, the holy grail, when people talk about strategic business advice, which you may not have the skills to provide yet, but you can build up that confidence to do that. I predict that within 10 years, as I say, it won't be tomorrow, and it may not take as long as 10 years, but it's much more likely more and more firms will have that sort of a spread of the services that they provide, that they need to provide, unless they're happy to accept much lower average fees in respect of compliance work. So how's this all going to impact you as individuals, people running your own practices, people in smaller firms? Well, the headline message is you've got to be more human. I've heard non-accountants suggest less like an accountant. Of course, I wouldn't say that, but less like a bean counter, if you like. More human. Recognize if you run a small practice or a large practice, inevitably that migration, that change focus requires a flatter structure, because junior staff can't give advice, not that is of real value. So there's a change there as well. But these are the types of things clients are going to be looking for from you. Do you have the confidence to provide advice? Can you build clients' trust, expertise, handhold them, help them with the new technology that they're using? Help them identify which apps to use. QuickBooks tell us there's over 700 apps to choose from that link with QuickBooks alone, let alone those that link with other software providers. I engage a lot online, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on Accounting Web with accountants. There's always somebody who dismisses all this talk about the future and says, no, I'm going to carry on doing what I've always done. The point I would make, ladies and gentlemen, is you cannot force fit the future to your existing business model, to your current business model. The future is going to be different. The speed of transformation, the speed of change will never be as slow again as it is today. We think things are moving fast. It's just going to get faster. David's smiling because David coined this ADHD point. We were talking about strategy for helping clients with business advice and strategy for accountants' own practices. And I've often said hope is not a strategy. But we all agreed, before you can give clients strategic advice, you've got to ask them good questions. A good starting point is asking them about their ambitions, dreams, hopes and desires. Ask them about their ADHD. My apologies to anybody who suffers with ADHD in real life, but it's a useful acronym. That's the starting point for your own practice as well. In terms of short-term preparation, if you haven't yet done so, get your practice and clients into the cloud. Start to develop and expand your advisory services. There are 3 P's there. You've got to be able to effectively promote them generally. You've got to be able to pitch them at the prices you want and secure the gig, secure the work, and you've got to be able to provide the value that's inherent in those services. Build a referral network. Accountants say they get all their business from referrals, but what do you do to actively encourage those referrals? And maybe have relationships with other accountants too. Explore the new technology, artificial intelligence, client apps that are out there. Keep on top of what's going on and practice your selling skills so that you don't leave it too late. In the longer term, you do have a strategy for your practice, don't you? If you don't have a strategy for your own practice, how the hell can you expect clients to take you seriously when you talk to them about having a strategy for their business? And by the way, if you do it for yourself, it makes you better placed to understand how you're going to be able to do it for clients as well. Informed projections for the future, not just assuming that everything will continue as it always has done. As I said earlier, systemize your workflows and processes. Build the future team that you need. If you're in a larger, small firm, who's making decisions about technology and apps in your firm? Somebody in their 50s or somebody in their 20s? And recognize there's going to be a reduced reliance on compliance. I often talk about key business skills. There are loads of key business skills most accountants don't have. I said the other day, don't come to Accountex if you don't want to benefit from all the free CPD on offer. I got it wrong. I thought accountants knew that CPD goes beyond technical updates, because of course there's a lot of CPD here that isn't just technical, sort of thing that I'm doing today, for example, and I don't do technical updates anymore. Developing your key business skills is qualifying CPD for most professional bodies. Continuing professional development, not keeping my technical knowledge up to date. Important, but not all we need to be doing. There's 6 key skills there that I encourage you to think about. Maybe that's where you start. Because we need to recognize that in the future we won't just be competing with the other accountants who do what we do. We will be competing with the accountants who transitioned earlier than us. We'll be competing with the accountants who made the change and started improving their client service and selling skills earlier than us. Better prepared accountants, the business coaches and consultants who will also be offering to interpret the financial data to help clients integrate and choose new technology to use for the future. If you're not familiar with it, you will lose out to those who are doing it. And by the way, these guys, their starting point was learning how to promote, pitch and provide the service. They've already got those skills. We've got to catch up. My key messages then, the world is changing. The accountancy world is changing. You can't do everything at once. Pick the developments that you find of particular interest. Give yourself business advice. What are you going to do differently going forwards? Build key business skills and start this year in 2019. Before I finish with a couple of the points that I promised I would close with, at the start of the talk I promised I would highlight 3 key areas. I said I would explain to you the technology that is going to be changing your role as accountants. Secondly, I would talk about how this is going to impact your practices. And thirdly, what actions can you take to benefit from and exploit those changes. I hope you feel that I've achieved and met those promises. On your seats, you have one of my promotional cards here. It has 12 tips in it. It also has a tear-off slip. If you'd like me to provide you with copies of the slides or any other freebies that are available, fill that in, leave it on the table here. I will collect it before we go. Alternatively, you can go to my website and download it for free there. It's easier for you, frankly, and for me, if you pop your details on the card and leave it on the table here before we finish. I haven't quite finished yet, as I said, two or three final things to close with. First of all, you will remember I stressed right at the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, I asked you, are you special and different from other accountants? I stressed, yes, you are special and different. Even those of you who've arrived later and are standing at the back, standing room only, love that. You are all special and different from other accountants. The output we produce may be similar, but you're special and different because your backgrounds are different. Your style, your approach, your processes, your systems, the way you deliver services to clients, the services you choose to provide, they are all special and different from other accountants. But I promised you I would highlight the mistake people make when they start to highlight their differences and what makes them different. The really important point for you is whenever you are highlighting what makes you special and different from other accountants, you need to do it so that it evidences how your difference benefits your clients. Being special and different alone is not good enough. Think about how your special differences benefit your clients. I promised you that I would also highlight for you 3 key things that you can do that will enable you to make a difference going forwards. Won't just make a difference for you, it makes a difference for your clients as well. 3 things, very quick, very simple, very easy. What will make all the difference to you is what you think, what you believe, and what you do. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that as a result of having been here today, I've influenced you to think differently, to believe that you can achieve more, and that as a result of being here, you will do things differently today. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, you are special and different.